How did two gay men go from secret dates to making LGBTQ plus history in Thailand? 17 years of love, one historic wedding, and a moment that changed everything. Their story isn't just about romance, it's about breaking the law of silence and standing proud in front of the world. Stay with us to witness how love conquered it all. Bangkok, 2007. Inside a small, overheated studio hidden in the heart of the city, where flickering neon lights struggled to cut through the thick summer air, dozens of young hopefuls gathered, each chasing a dream, each longing to be noticed. They came from dusty rural towns and bustling city streets with worn backpacks, faded headshots, and rehearsed smiles. Among them stood two young men, Porsche and Arm, strangers at the time, unaware that this day would silently mark the beginning of a story that would follow them for years. Porsche Apiwat Seri entered the room with a quiet, natural confidence. Tall, sharp-featured, with an easy smile that felt both inviting and self-assured, he carried an energy that pulled eyes toward him without effort. The way he moved, the way he laughed, even the way he stood still, all of it seemed to suggest that he belonged exactly where he was, even if no one knew his name yet. Just a few steps away sat Arm, Sapanyu Panatkul, his energy the complete opposite. Calm, observant, almost guarded, Arm radiated a subtle intensity that didn't scream for attention, but drew people in slowly. Behind his thoughtful eyes lay layers of untold stories, and while Porsche lit up every room, Arm lingered in people's minds long after he left it. Both were there for the same reason, to audition for a new reality TV show called Paparazzi. It promised fame and exposure, a chance at something bigger. On paper, they were just two more names on a long casting list, two anonymous faces in a crowded studio, both navigating the same pressure-filled environment. But fate, in its quiet and deliberate way, had already begun to push them toward each other. Their first connection came not with grand gestures, but through something simpler, a glance across the room during a long wait between audition rounds. No dramatic music, no fireworks. Just a brief second when their eyes met, held, and moved on. But in that fleeting moment, something registered for both of them, enough to remember. As days passed and callbacks followed, their paths kept crossing, at first by accident, then with growing frequency. They started sharing the same lunch table, exchanging light jokes about exhausting rehearsals, complaining about choreography, bonding over trivial things like bad cafeteria coffee and shared music tastes. Small conversations became longer ones. Casual comments turned personal. Without intending to, they began learning details about each other's childhoods, family dynamics, and the hidden insecurities that most contestants kept buried beneath layers of ambition. Porsche, with his usual humor and easy charm, often found ways to make Arm laugh at the most unexpected moments. Arm, in return, responded with carefully chosen words that cut through the noise, leaving Porsche surprised by how deeply this quiet boy could understand him. Their chemistry grew naturally, effortlessly, until their banter became a comfort neither wanted to go without. Late-night rehearsals stretched into slow walks home. Quick chats turned into text conversations that lasted long after midnight. They began waiting for each other between shoots, finding excuses to linger longer at the studio, just to steal a few extra minutes together. Neither dared to define what this was. Not in 2007. Not in an industry where two young male contestants growing too close could spark rumors dangerous enough to end careers before they began. The entertainment world wasn't ready. The audience wasn't ready, and both of them knew it. So they stayed cautious, careful, keeping this fragile connection hidden behind layers of humor and friendship, pretending that lingering glances and casual touches meant nothing more than camaraderie. But feelings like this don't stay hidden for long. One evening, after an especially grueling shoot, they found themselves sitting side by side on the studio steps, staring at the endless stream of Bangkok traffic. Their shoulders almost touched, both lost in separate thoughts but silently sharing the same air. Without warning, Porsche nudged Arm's shoulder, a small, seemingly playful gesture, but in that brief contact, something shifted between them. Arm turned, smiled, soft, real, completely unguarded. For a few seconds, neither moved. The moment lingered before they both laughed it off and slipped back into familiar banter. But that night, lying in their separate beds, replaying old conversations, scrolling through text messages that suddenly felt heavier with new meaning, both of them knew something had begun. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Though no words were spoken, they started finding more and more reasons to stay close. A shared coffee run, a quick walk after practice, or just sitting side by side in comfortable silence when words felt too dangerous. Beneath the neon lights of Bangkok, between career pressures, family expectations, and the fear of being exposed, two young men, each carrying their own battles, were quietly writing the first chapter of a love story neither of them dared to name. But even without a label, even without a confession, fate had already made its choice. From this day forward, they wouldn't be able to walk away from each other, ever again. What started as a casual friendship quickly turned into something neither of them can get away with. By early 2008, Porsche and Arm had developed a routine that seemed effortless, but meant a lot. They laughed at the same jokes, complained about the same grueling workouts, and found comfort in each other's quiet company. What seemed like coincidence at first quickly became habit. Wherever one went, the other followed. They didn't plan it, it just happened. Day after day, week after week, without ever having to explain why. Their relationship deepened off camera. After long days of filming, they lingered in empty dressing rooms, talking about life, family, and insecurities they'd never shared with anyone else. Porsche, known for his sense of humor, became lighter, more thoughtful when they were alone. Arm, who rarely opened up to people, found himself talking more, laughing more, even teasing back when Porsche made fun of him. Their conversations stretched into the night, their phones buzzing with messages that rarely ended before the sun rose. Topics shifted from work gossip to childhood memories to future dreams, and slowly to fears they didn't even admit to themselves. Friends noticed, coworkers noticed, producers noticed. But when asked, they brushed it off with jokes and practiced smiling. In 2008, the two male stars became so close that they could invite gossip that neither of them was ready for. Thai showbiz isn't kind to stories like theirs. Careers can end with a single headline, so they hide in plain sight. They keep their little moments private, between rehearsals and photo shoots. They laugh louder when the camera is near, stand farther apart in group photos, and make sure never to linger too long in public. But behind closed doors, that's a different story. Even in secret, though, their relationship continues to grow. There are moments, unplanned, exhilarating, when things feel dangerous enough to almost cross the line. Like that afternoon, trapped under a narrow awning outside the studio as the rain pours down harder than expected. Standing inches apart, wet hair stuck to their faces, they laugh, but their eyes say something else. Neither moves, neither dares, but they both feel it. The atmosphere between them changed that day. And even as they laughed, they both carried that memory with them, replaying it on quiet nights when sleep wouldn't come. Their jokes became more playful, their silences more comfortable. On busy sets, Porsche would glance across the room just to check if Arm was okay. Arm, on the other hand, always knew when Porsche was faking a smile for the camera. Without saying anything, they began to read each other better than anyone else. A look was enough, a tilt of the head, a raised eyebrow. It was as if they had developed their own secret language, one that only they understood. By 2009, they had become inseparable. After work, they would have late dinners in quiet places where no one would recognize them. They would drive through the empty streets of Bangkok at midnight, music blaring, singing like children without a public image to protect them. They sat on the floor of their apartment, eating cheap takeout, talking about dreams they were afraid to pursue. Every memory, every laugh, became a thread that drew them closer together. They found safety in the small, ordinary things. Grocery trips, coffee breaks, movie nights where neither of them paid attention to the plot because they were too busy talking about everything else. The more they tried to act like friends, the more it became clear that this was something more. There were nights when they stood outside each other's doors longer than necessary, hesitating before saying goodbye. Nights when their text conversations turned from playful banter to confessions they didn't have the courage to say in person. Porsche began to notice how his heart beat faster whenever Arm called. Meanwhile, Arm felt more and more empty whenever Porsche wasn't around. The distance between them, emotionally and physically, was shrinking. Yet, neither of them said anything. Fear held them back. The industry watched too closely. Fans analyzed every photo, every interaction. Managers warned them to distance themselves. But instead, they found more ways to be together. Late-night drives became regular escapes. Shared playlists became silent ways to say the things they couldn't say out loud. They both knew the risks, but neither had the strength to back down. By early 2010, the unspoken feelings between them had become silent, unspoken truths. They both laughed, like always, but this time the laughter felt different. Warmer, heavier, like both of them knew they just crossed into something they couldn't undo. That night, as they lay in their separate beds, neither of them slept easily. Both stared at their phones, half tempted to say more, but neither brave enough to send the first message. They didn't need labels, they didn't need to say the words. By 2010, both knew this was more than friendship, and whatever it wasn't going away. Before there was Instagram, before there were viral hashtags, there was high five. That's where it all really started. Back in 2007, after their first meeting during that chaotic audition season, Porsche found himself thinking about Arm more often than he cared to admit. There was something about Arm's quiet presence, his shy smile, the way he listened more than he spoke. So like any love-struck 20-something in that era, Porsche did what everyone did. He looked him up online. On Chai 5, Porsche sent the first friend request, followed by a string of random playful comments on Arm's photos. At first, it was harmless teasing, inside jokes about bad hair days, silly quiz results, and music playlists. But slowly, the conversations moved from wall posts to private messages, from late-night chats to long phone calls, and before either of them realized it, their online friendship became something warmer, softer, something neither of them wanted to let go of. For a whole year, they danced around it. Porsche dropped hints, Arm pretended not to notice, or maybe he noticed, but didn't know what to do with those feelings. They shared music links, talked about favorite TV shows, complained about work, but under all that was a growing connection. Until finally, on May 5, 2008, exactly 1 year after their first real-world encounter, they made it official. That was the day they became more than friends. Their first date wasn't some over-the-top cinematic moment. It was simple, honest, real. Just two people, finally saying out loud what their hearts had known for months. From that day forward, they built a life together, one day at a time. 6 years of love, laughter, and learning how to navigate life as a couple in the spotlight. There were fights over little things, like who left the bathroom light on or who forgot to reply to a text. But there were also quiet Sunday mornings, making breakfast together, spontaneous road trips, and late-night talks about the future. And when 2014 rolled around, Porsche knew exactly what he wanted that future to look like. He spent weeks planning, overthinking, and then scrapping his plans to start over again. The perfect moment to propose kept slipping through his fingers. Until finally, at the wedding of a close friend on January 10th, standing in the middle of a garden filled with fairy lights, music, and champagne-soaked laughter, Porsche realized there would never be a more perfect time. While guests danced and toasted to love, Porsche pulled Arm aside. Arm looked at him, a little confused, probably thinking this was another one of Porsche's jokes. But when Porsche got down on one knee, pulled out that small velvet box, and looked up with eyes more serious than Arm had ever seen, the mood shifted instantly. Porsche's voice shook just a little, but his words were steady. "I've loved you through every late-night fight, every dumb joke, every time we both doubted where this was going. And I know now, I want to keep loving you for the rest of my life. Will you marry me?" For a second, Arm just stared. caught between shock, embarrassment, and that familiar smile that always gave him away. His cheeks flushed bright red. Guests started whispering. A few phones were already recording. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Arm answered. "I agree." It wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. The meaning was clear. The crowd erupted. Porsche laughed and cried all at once, pulling Arm into the tightest hug of their lives. The video of that moment spread quickly. Fans shared it, friends replayed it. Even strangers online felt like they were part of something bigger, a love story that had quietly unfolded for years, now finally out in the open. And just a few months later, on October 28, 2014, with friends and family gathered under the same kind of fairy lights that had witnessed their proposal, Porsche and Arm exchanged vows and became husbands. It wasn't just a party, it was a statement, a promise fulfilled, a love that waited, survived, and finally got its day. Their journey wasn't traditional, it wasn't simple, and it definitely wasn't easy. But in the end, it was real, beautiful, the kind of love that reminds you that waiting sometimes is worth it. And for the fans watching from afar, the ones who had followed their story for years, hoping, wondering, dreaming, this proposal became more than just a milestone for two people. It became a symbol, a reminder that love, no matter how long it waits, no matter how many barriers it faces, deserves to be seen. Looking back, it's hard not to ask yourself, if you were there that night, would you have cried, laughed, or maybe gotten down on one knee yourself? And now, here's the question for you. Have you ever waited for someone, knowing deep down they were worth every second? When Arm said yes to Porsche's unforgettable proposal in 2014, it felt like the beginning of a new chapter, a beautiful chapter, filled with dreams of white suits, flower arches, and vows spoken in front of friends and family. But little did they know, this chapter would last a decade longer than they had ever imagined. For most couples, an engagement is a countdown to a wedding day, a joyful, predictable timeline. But for Porsche and Arm, it became a countdown to history, a waiting game that stretched across years, political debates, social movements, and societal shifts far beyond their control. In Thailand, same-sex marriage wasn't just illegal back then, it was a taboo topic, a silent battle that lingered in courtrooms, government halls, and living rooms across the country. The law wasn't on their side. And public opinion, a constant roller coaster, one day filled with hope, the next with headlines that felt like setbacks. But here's the thing about Porsche and Arm, they weren't just waiting, they were living, loving, building a life, brick by brick, with equal parts courage and vulnerability. They bought a modest apartment on the outskirts of Bangkok. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. The kind of space where love grew between coffee mugs left in the sink, where arguments started over whose turn it was to do laundry, but always ended with quiet apologies and soft hugs. The walls soon filled with framed memories, photos from road trips, Polaroids with friends, tickets from concerts, and even silly outtakes from late-night karaoke sessions. And through it all, they never hid. Both were public figures. Their careers in entertainment kept their faces on screens and their names in headlines. And while Thailand's entertainment industry had a reputation for embracing BL boys love content on screen, real-life LGBTQ+ couples were still rarely visible, especially ones bold enough to declare their love outside of fictional scripts. But Porsche and Arm, they chose visibility, carefully but intentionally. They showed up together at events, red carpets, press interviews, talk shows, always standing side by side, always sending an unspoken message. We're here, together. On social media, they posted photos that made followers whisper, then wonder, then cheer. There was no dramatic coming out post, no carefully worded press release, just real moments shared with quiet bravery. Then came the turning point, the day they posted their first official couple photo. No captions, no hashtags, no explanations, just a candid, sunlit snapshot of two men, standing close, smiles soft, eyes full of meaning. The internet exploded, some fans celebrated, others criticized. Tabloids speculated for weeks. But for Porsche and Arm, it wasn't about the noise, it was about the truth. Over the next few years, they became silent warriors in Thailand's LGBTQ+ visibility movement, without ever labeling themselves as activists. Their love story became a living, breathing protest against invisibility. They traveled together, laughed together, cried together. They met each other's families, celebrated holidays, cooked terrible dinners that ended in pizza deliveries, and danced in their living room on random Tuesday nights. But behind every smile was the ache of waiting for their love to be seen, recognized, protected by law. Every time Thailand's parliament debated civil partnership bills, they sat glued to the television, fingers intertwined, hearts racing with cautious optimism. And every time the bills stalled again, they comforted each other the only way they knew how, with late-night talks, quiet tears, and renewed promises to never give up. There were career highs. Arm landed a lead role in a primetime drama. Porsche expanded his production work, mentoring younger LGBTQ+ artists and creating more authentic queer content for Thai audiences. There were personal milestones too. Their first home renovation, adopting a rescue dog who quickly became their fur child, celebrating 10 years together with a private trip to Chiang Mai, where they sat by a lantern-lit river and talked for hours about their future. There were also moments of frustration, nights when the weight of waiting felt too heavy to bear, times when they asked each other, what if it never happens? What if we wait forever? But there were also moments of deep, unshakable laughter, shared over street food, late-night movies, and board games that lasted until 3 a.m. They leaned into joy, because sometimes joy itself was an act of defiance. And through every triumph and every setback, one thing never changed: their unwavering decision to stand by each other. By 2024, the whispers about Thailand finally legalizing same-sex marriage grew louder. The LGBTQ+ community held its breath. Rainbow flags started appearing in more public places. Hashtags like Marriage Equality Thailand began trending. Hope was in the air. And on quiet nights, sitting together on their tiny balcony, under strings of fairy lights, Porsche and Arm would talk about the future. What their wedding day would look like, who they'd invite, what vows they'd write, what kind of suits they'd wear, and most importantly, how they would finally, legally, say I do. 17 years of love, laughter, heartache, and hope, all leading up to the moment they had dreamed about for more than a decade. And as the sun set on 2024, with hands intertwined, hearts steady and eyes full of quiet determination, they both knew that moment was finally coming. January 23rd, 2025, a day that Thailand, and especially Porsche and Arm, would never forget. For months leading up to this day, the two had followed every news update, every social media discussion, hoping, praying that this long-awaited law would finally become real. And when the official announcement came, when Thailand declared that same-sex marriage would be legally recognized, they both sat in their living room, holding each other, overwhelmed, silent, and then laughing through tears. The morning of January 23, Bangkok woke up to a new chapter in history. Couples from all over the city and beyond gathered at district offices, waiting for their chance to turn love into law. Porsche and Arm arrived early at the Phra Nakhon district office, dressed in simple but elegant white linen shirts, coordinated beige slacks, and matching silver bracelets they had bought years ago, silently promising each other that when the day came, they would wear them. The atmosphere was electric, but also intimate. Around them, couples held hands, exchanged nervous glances, whispered words of encouragement. Rainbow flags fluttered in the morning breeze. Photographers from major news outlets lined the entrance, and somewhere in the crowd, friends waved, calling out their names. When the official finally called for Apiwat and Sapanyu, they stood up, hands tightly clasped, hearts racing faster than they could control. The paperwork took only minutes, but each pen stroke felt monumental. As the clerk handed over their official marriage certificate, time seemed to stop. Both stared at the paper, eyes filling with tears, realizing this was it. The day they had dreamed of, waited for, and fought for in their own quiet way had arrived. Walking out of the office, certificate in hand, they were met with applause. Reporters rushed forward, microphones extended, asking how they felt. Porsche smiled, holding back tears, and simply said, "This is love, and today, love won." The image of them standing on those office steps, holding their certificate, embracing in front of flashing cameras, spread across social media within hours. Hashtags like Love Wins Thailand and Porsche Arm Wedding flooded timelines. Friends, fans, strangers, LGBTQ+ rights groups, all celebrated alongside them. But for Porsche Arm, the celebration wasn't over. In the weeks that followed, they poured their hearts into planning a wedding that truly reflected their 17-year journey. They chose a riverside rooftop venue in Bangkok, one that overlooked the city where their love story had unfolded. The decor was a mix of soft florals, earthy tones, and framed photographs chronicling their life together. From blurry high-five selfies, to snapshots from countless trips, to candid moments that had captured their laughter, their struggles, and everything in between. On the afternoon of their wedding, the sky turned a perfect shade of gold. Guests gathered, many wiping away tears even before the ceremony began. As soft acoustic music played, Arm waited at the altar, already blinking away tears, while Porsche walked toward him. Smiling, confident, and filled with the kind of joy that only comes after years of waiting. Their vows were raw, unscripted in parts, filled with memories, inside jokes, and promises for the years ahead. They spoke of the days they almost gave up, the nights they stayed up comforting each other after bad days at work, the vacations where they found healing, and the morning coffees that had kept them going. When the officiant finally said, "You may now kiss your husband," the cheers could be heard echoing across the rooftop. The reception that followed was a blend of tradition and modern joy. Close friends gave speeches, recounting moments when Porsche and Arm had been there for them, offering love advice, career guidance, and shoulders to cry on. Others spoke of how the couple's online presence, their candid posts, their fearless travel photos had inspired countless others in the LGBTQ+ community to live more openly, more authentically. Their first dance, set to a soft Thai ballad, was both tender and joyful. Guests gathered around, forming a circle, swaying, clapping, and in that moment, it felt like the whole city was celebrating with them. As the night deepened, their wedding hashtag started trending, not just in Thailand, but across Southeast Asia. Major LGBTQ+ publications picked up the story. Fans from the Philippines, Vietnam, Japan, and even Europe and the US left thousands of comments. Words like, "Thank you, you give me hope," and "You've shown me that love can win," filled their inboxes. As the night deepened, their wedding hashtag started trending, not just in Thailand, but across Southeast Asia. Major LGBT publications picked up the story. Fans from the Philippines, Vietnam, Japan, and even Europe and the US left thousands of comments. Words like, "Thank you, you give me hope," and "You've shown me that love can win," filled their inboxes. Later that night, long after the guests had left and the music had faded, Porsche and Arm sat on their apartment floor, still in their wedding suits, scrolling through hundreds of messages and photos. Arm rested his head on Porsche's shoulder, smiled, and whispered, "Can you believe this is real?" Porsche, looking at their wedding rings, simply replied, "After everything, we deserve this." And they did. Because on January 23rd, 2025, in front of friends, family, strangers, and the entire world watching online, Porsche and Arm had stood up, faced history, and said loudly, proudly, and with every ounce of their love, "I do." After the wedding, after the headlines, after the world stopped to celebrate their vows, Porsche and Arm stepped into a new chapter of life as husbands. Married life didn't mean perfection. It meant growth. Morning coffees felt warmer, inside jokes hit harder, and each time they introduced each other as "my husband," it sent a small spark of pride through their hearts. But their story didn't stop at love. Together, they continued to document their daily lives, sharing moments that ranged from ordinary to extraordinary. From cooking mishaps at home to spontaneous weekend getaways, their Instagram feed remained a colorful, unapologetic love letter to their journey. And yet, with every photo posted, with every heartfelt caption, they knew their story had outgrown their own happiness. They had become more than a couple. They had become a symbol. For LGBTQ+ youth across Thailand and beyond, Portia and Arm were proof that love between two men could not only survive, but thrive under the brightest spotlight. Their inboxes filled with messages, from young people too scared to come out, from parents trying to understand their LGBTQ+ children, and from strangers saying, "Because of you, I believe love is possible for me too." They began receiving invitations to speak at Pride events on university campuses and at national conferences. Whether standing on stage before thousands or sitting in a small classroom with young students, their message was always the same: love is love, and no law, no prejudice, no stereotype should ever change that. But the reality wasn't always picture perfect. Even after marriage equality became law, discrimination didn't just vanish overnight. Hate comments still appeared. Judgmental stares still followed them in public. Media outlets still hesitated to fully embrace LGBTQ+ love stories. And it left them with one burning question, a question they began asking publicly, again and again, to anyone willing to listen. Why, in 2025, does love between two people of the same gender still make some people uncomfortable? They challenged their audience, their followers, and even strangers scrolling past their posts to reflect on that question. Because love in its purest form is universal. It's not a political statement, it's not a scandal, it's not something to be hidden or whispered about behind closed doors. Love is human. Love is connection. Identity is natural. We weren't born to fit into someone else's mold. We were born to feel, to connect, to be seen, and to be loved. Portia and Arm began ending their public speeches with that message, letting it linger in the air, letting it reach the hearts of those who needed to hear it most. In 2024, they launched a scholarship fund for LGBTQ+ students, using their platform to promote LGBTQ's visibility in media and education. They continued partnering with advocacy groups, speaking on national TV, appearing in documentaries, and writing guest columns about marriage equality and human rights. In 2025, they led Thailand's largest ever Pride parade, walking at the front, waving rainbow flags, holding hands, and reminding the world that visibility matters. Their home became a safe space, not just for themselves, but for others. Friends, LGBTQ+ youth, even fans from other provinces visited to seek advice, to find comfort, to feel less alone. Their love story by then had become part of Thailand's LGBTQ+ history. But through it all, through every interview, every headline, every social media post, they remained just Portia and Arm. Two people, still debating what movie to watch on Friday nights. Still taking unfiltered selfies with messy hair and sleepy smiles. Still laughing at each other's terrible jokes. And as they look toward the future, their mission stays clear. Keep loving, keep showing up, and keep reminding the world that love, real love, should never be a source of shame. Now, we want to hear from you. Why do you think in 25 love between two people of the same gender still makes some people uncomfortable? Do you believe love, in all its forms, deserves to be seen, celebrated, and protected? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because change starts with conversations like this. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey of love and resilience. Portia and Arm's story is more than a romance. It's a reminder that love, no matter who it's between, deserves to be seen and celebrated. What do you think about same-sex marriage in Thailand and around the world? Share your thoughts below. And if you believe in stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.